Welcome to Margins and Mandates, the show where plays, pivots, and pressure-tested leadership take center stage. I'm your host, Jeff Lortz, former operator advisor and founder of the Agile Operator. Today I'm joined by Garth Coleman, CEO of Canvas GFX. Garth and I go way back to the early days of CAD and PLM, and this conversation was a great full-circle moment. We talk about his path from engineer to product builder to sales to product and go-to-market leadership at Dassault Systèmes, and now into the CEO seat. We also dig into the challenges he's tackling today, closing the last mile between digital systems and the frontline workers through what he calls a visual execution platform. It's also an honest conversation about first-time CEO life, raising capital, managing cash, launching a new brand and product, and making smart bets with limited resources. Let's get into it. Garth, thanks for joining the podcast.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to the conversation. After we talked, a few weeks ago, we were reminiscing about those days where we were kind of working side by side. It was kind of an interesting scenario where, when I was at PTC and you were at our major reseller, we probably didn't know each other back then, but we probably have similar experiences from a different angle. It's always always a challenge on both sides of that when you're a reseller and an ISV, managing that relationship.
Yeah, those were interesting, fun times for sure. Yeah.
And I left the CAD business and you kind of stayed in it, right? To some extent, right?
Yes, always in it or around it, even still. Yeah.
So give me a little bit about sort of the journey. So from RAND Technologies, which was a reseller of computer-aided design, PTC was the innovative product that kind of changed the computer-aided design world, right? And RAND was our number one reseller around the world. Where did you go from there?
Well, I mean, even getting into RAND was an interesting story. I was a mechanical engineer, graduated. I was into thermodynamics, and when you look at thermodynamics problems, you always have this like box on the left, which is your energy input, which is a boiler, and they never told us anything about that. And when I graduated, I got to work for a company that was the box, with the boiler. So there was a lot of stuff I did there, crazy engineering stuff they did, but it was obviously not co-engineer back in the day. And a lot of manufacturing, huge manufacturing shops. So I really had a good taste of it on that side, on the production side. But on the engineering side, it was like Dilbert comic,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, all the engineering problems have been solved. There wasn't massive innovation change happening. I'm like, this is it, literally Dilbert. And so I tried to innovate with some different software to improve some things. It was in quality assurance and things like that. And finally, my friend from university, he was working at RAND. He was showing me, oh, look at this stuff we're doing and everything. He's telling me about it. And I'm like, that sounds amazing. I want to go there. So eventually got into there and started working at RAND and I was there for 9 years. Started as a trainer for Pro E and doing stuff there, then doing Pro Intralink and data management, and then building from that into bigger and bigger things and getting into PLM and so on. And eventually decided to leave to try the startup thing because inside of RAND, we had a group that was starting to make software, software on top of Intralink or software to connect with Dassault Systèmes Smart Team. And I was leading like product management for that and realizing, hey, man, I like making solutions and products and things like that and bringing them to market and pushing through channels. And I thought, all right, let me go try that in a startup. That startup didn't work out so well. But in that startup, I had talked to a couple of the executives and said, how do I get into your office in my career? Like, what do I got to do to be in your seat? And they all said, you got to try sales. And I'm like, I don't want to be a sales guy. I'm like, doesn't matter. Go carry a bag and see what that's like. I'm like, okay. So then I got lucky in that there was a startup that was looking for a salesperson, led by a guy who used to work at PTC, strangely enough, circles, right? And they hired me in as a sales guy with no sales experience, but it was kind of technical. It was like 3D software for building communications and all kinds of stuff. And we got acquired by Dassault Systèmes. And even though I wasn't really the best sales guy, the act of doing that and getting that appreciation for how difficult it is to move the needle on a sale, when we got bought by Dassault Systems, my role changed into being like the strategic guy to integrate into the channels and all the sales enablement and all the go-to-market materials and the battle cards and kind of all that fun stuff.
Like product
And
marketing, basically.
basically product marketing,
Yeah.
products, and it evolved into product strategy and like new product introduction, multi-channel management with direct sales, indirect sales. We were the first product sold through all of Dassault Systems channels. And then they decided to shut it all down and move the assets around. So then my job was to move all the assets around and find new jobs for everybody in the company. And then I took a group over and did some cool stuff with virtual reality and virtual training. And that was a lot of fun making a new product there. And then eventually I kind of came back to my PLM, PDM roots and was in the Innovia brand, did a lot of stuff there, doing a lot of things on cloud, trying to bring cloud PLM, cloud PDM. That was a challenge back in the day. And then that evolving into really leading what is the new mid-market offering, replacing stuff I had sold back in the RAND days. And then from there, taking over all the marketing function and cleaning up all the messaging and all the go-to-market there. And then over time, kind of just continuing my role at Dassault Systems until I was doing less and less actual like creative work and contribution work and more like best practices and orchestration. And while that's fun, that just wasn't my DNA. And I'm like, I got to get out and solve things, bring things to market, be a creator, be an innovator. And I was doing a lot of stuff with AI, trying to learn on my own. And then it just kind of reconnected with somebody, with Peter Shore, he was the founder of Aris PLM. And I connected with him. Hey man, I knew him back from the RAND days. You know, you think of like making connections in your career and how they can come back 30 years later, you know, and help you get a role. And he's like, hey man, what's going on? I sold the company and I'm on a couple of different boards and you want to be a CEO? And he starts telling me about this company and what they're doing. And I'm like, you know, I've been in that 20 years ago. I don't want to do that again. It didn't really work. And he's like, no, you got to see it. Go talk to the CTO and what they're doing. And I saw it and I was like, they're fixing the things and that we couldn't fix back then. And the industry hasn't changed. And now we can kind of like go back in time with the technology of today, with the AI of today, with all my knowledge and wisdom over the 20 years, and now finally go solve some problems. I'm like, I'm up for that. Let's go. And that's kind of what got me here.
So talk about what PLM is a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then you just said it hasn't changed much over the years. I mean, you know, back when you and I were peddling, you know, Intralink, you know, I loved how you dropped that name. You know, PLM was just being kind of born, or that concept was just being born at that time. Like, how has it transformed up until today?
Well, let me be more precise. The PLM has massively transformed. So what is it? It started off as PDM, you know, product data management. So you have all this CAD data and you know PTC comes along and starts linking them all together. This is linked to that, linked to this, linked to that. The drawing is linked to the assembly, linked to the parts, linked to all these different things. So now you got to manage all these relationships. So that was kind of the well, even but this before Pro PDM, but Pro PDM and then Pro Intralink and then people realizing, hey, now that I'm governing it, what else can I do in terms of the process governance of managing the life cycle of this thing? So then, you know, PLM was kind of born, and there's various different products along the way. And then that started to kind of evolve, and every company started to do it in their own way. You know, Dassault Systems' approach was kind of similar but different from PTC, similar and different from Siemens, and you know, then everyone's trying to outmaneuver and outposition and outwin, and you know, that was a kind of an interesting thing. And there's been tremendous innovations there. And even what Aris has done, they took a totally different approach, and what they're doing is pretty interesting too. So that has evolved and innovated. But where I was getting into when I got into Dassault Systems around this kind of 3D visualization, and 3D visualization, even when I started, you know, late 90s, was cool, but that's what it was, just cool. You know, oh, a non-engineer can look at the engineering data. That's cool. But okay, so what? What is it actually helping you do? So when I got involved with this startup called Simage that then became 3D Via Composer, that then became SolidWorks Composer and CATIA Composer, that was really finally a means to then enrich that with more information. generate images, generate videos, try to make some interactive content. That was pretty interesting and exciting. But you want to bring that now into manufacturing or into service. Then now they need a work instruction. And that's different. They don't just need visual aids. So if somebody wanted to do something interactive, you still had to put it in some kind of container. You still had to put some kind of, web interface or API hook or something like that. And we just didn't have that out of the box. It didn't exist back then. We were trying to get off of ActiveX and go onto Java. Like that was just like a complicated thing back then. So fast forward 20 years and you go on a shop floor and what do you still see? CAD screenshots, digital photos, PDFs. And it's like, wow, you have all this amazing transformation in PLM technology. You've got smart factories, you've got, model-based design and simulation and massive complexity happening, process happening up to the second and just in time and IoT, smart everything everywhere. And then the poor workers looking at this freaking photo. I'm like, really? So that part hasn't changed. So all this connection that's been happening on product and process really hasn't changed the experience of the person. And when I saw what Envision is able to do, and I'm like, okay, you're not trying to put more stuff into the 3D environment. You're actually, and then trying to put that into a container, you actually are the container. And if you have 3D, put 3D in the container. If you don't, put text in there or put image, put video, put multimedia, whatever it is, it's the container. Then you can put the container wherever you want. And then you can put hooks on the container and it's already done. And then, okay, that's great. But then how do you start connecting all these things together? And then, add AI into that. So AI can start to automate and create and so on. And, wait a minute, I don't have 3D, but I have a video. Okay, take the video, bring it in and start building the instruction and deliver that. So now it's like we've solved this problem of authoring in an instructional format that someone can use. So it's not just a glorified visual aid in some PDF off to the side that no one's ever going to look at. It's kind of this live, dynamic, connected, updatable thing. And then it's now delivered in a digital format. So the last mile problem of the digital thread is getting it to the person. And now it's much more digital, it's interactive, it's more supporting a digital native, younger workers coming in that want this interactivity. Kind of with visual execution in mind, not step-by-step text boxes everywhere or multi-page manuals and PDFs and things. And then when you do it digitally, now you can start to track what's going on. Now you can request input, request confirmation, have audit trails, know what was done. In a service world, instead of saying, "Hey, Jeff, please go do this service thing for me, and just tell me when it's done." I could say, "Jeff, do this service thing, and here's the 300-page manual, but here's the 5 pages you need. Now just do those 5 things." And you say, "I did those 5 things. Now I have an audit trace that you did those 5 things." So now you're bringing digital to the human and back. So connect the knowledge, author it, and deliver it. And now we're solving that problem. So that's what got me super excited, because I'm like, all this stuff over the last 30 years of trying to digitally transform everything, we can now finally plug the people into it.
So Canvas is the company, Envision is the product. Am I right?
So yes, I'll give a sneak peek here. So Canvas GFX is the company, founded back in 80s or 90s, believe it or not, as a graphics company. Back in the day when you had like CorelDRAW and those types of tools, and it was really a graphics for technical publishing. So the roots of the product are rooted in graphics. And over the years, that has evolved. And now we're into like 3D digital work instructions and AI generated content and so on. So there's been this really nice legacy of the company in that. So Envision is the product, let's say, but we're about to make a branding shift. And I've done a few brandings in the past. Rand Technologies became Rand Worldwide. From Simage into Dassault Systèmes, and then from 3D Via into other things. So done a bunch of different rebrands over the years. So we're going to do a little bit of a rebrand. So the company name is going to become Canvas Envision. And then we're going to have this visual execution platform. And then we'll have some different applications on top of that. So if you're creating content, or if you're an operator consuming content, or if I'm connecting it into PLM or manufacturing execution, there's a platform play with different apps that can run off of that, or you can then extend that platform and build things on top of it. And then, of course, AI is kind of core into all that. So that's already been there. We're just kind of exposing it in a little bit different way.
Okay.
So
So basically, it's the last mile of visualization for primarily manufacturing and service. Is that the primary
yeah,
use cases?
you call that a frontline worker.
Okay, frontline
The
worker.
person that's tasked to kind of build, support, maintain the world around us.
Yep.
It's those people that are the critical pieces. And you have this connected worker strategy that's out there. So people might have heard the concept of connected worker, which is like smart factory, smart machines, IoT, all this stuff connected. And what I'm realizing is, okay, you can give all that to the worker and put it on a tablet or something, but if the instruction is no better than a manual that you could have given them on a piece of paper, you haven't really connected them. You've given them information, but you haven't given them like wisdom and knowledge to go do the work. So somewhere along the line, the connected worker kind of forgot about the worker, and we're trying to bring that part back.
Mm, interesting. So you get the call, right, to become the CEO of Canvas GFX, right? You get the vision, right? It all makes sense, right? It's sort of the culmination of all the things you've been working on in your career, in one product set. It's your first time as a CEO. You've been at it since, when did you start? Last fall?
October.
October. So what's it been like?
Yep. Loving every second of it. I've had the luxury of being in long-term job, like I say at Rand, I was there for 9 years, at Dassault Systèmes 19 years, but I never stayed in a single job for more than a few years. So I had constant evolution in my career, and seeing how you can start something and see it through, and then take on a different role and continue pushing. So kind of getting from initial creation through to massive scale. Starting something that started with nothing, and then later on it's making millions and millions of dollars, but you supported and helped guide it all through those different phases, and from different angles. Whether it's a strategy, a marketing, a sales supporting role, or however it might be. So I've had the luxury over my career to kind of be in so many different areas. And then, of course, the things that I couldn't do because the job didn't call for it, like, say, finance. All right, well, went and got my MBA to kind of round that out. And then I made a point to work with the financial team to understand their models, understand the spreadsheets and the data, and understand how that's applying to the business. And then how is this happening, working with that, and how do we unlock this, and try to understand it at a business level. So I've kind of been around that, doing that. Just not being the guy at the top that owns it all. I've been kind of helping companies make a lot of money, but there's been other people above, and I guess I have a board above me, and it's still kind of the same thing, really, at the end of the day.
So,
So
so being a general manager, I guess, and being a CEO, right, are different in that way, right?
yes, yes,
The governance models and the sponsorship models are very different from company to company
yes,
depending upon the situation. Um, and managing that, right, is different than managing your boss in a company that you're both employees at. How have you found that
yes.
so far?
Well, you are the boss, so some people don't always want to tell you stuff, or you got to build that trust, but it's as a boss, not as a colleague. So that's an interesting dynamic. Although I'd experienced quite a bit of that at Dassault Systems as you kind of go up the career ladder, and maybe you're the scary VP or something like that. I don't know. Hopefully I wasn't scary, but I would say what someone told me this. I can't remember who. I wish I could tell you who told me this, but they said, "What does CEO stand for?" And it stands for Cash Extraction Officer. And it's like, yep, that's it, because everything is about keeping the company financially stable and viable. And whether you're doing a funding round, talking to investors, or doing some outreach to try to convince people that you have the thing they need, so that they'll be interested to try to do that, or try to close business, or solve a crisis that is costing a ton of money, and you got to figure out how to stop the bleed on that, or renegotiate something. It's really all about cash, the end of the day, that's going to drive shareholder value, and revenue solves all problems, right? So we did a funding round. That was really the first job I had coming in, is to try to secure the company's runway for the next bit that we're doing. And basically been CEO/CFO for a quarter. A small team. I don't have a CFO, so I'm doing a lot of that, and finally putting that aside, and now jumping in and put my CMO hat on, and now start launching this next gen product we're about to launch in a month from now.
Yeah, it's a good point, especially when you don't have a CFO. That there's really nobody else in the company that's thinking about cash, right? And it is the fertilizer on which you grow your company, and eventually it runs out, and nobody's really sort of paying close attention to that, other than you.
You have to balance, like, well, you want to grow,
Yeah.
and the shareholders want the growth. They want ARR. You got to get to the next series of funding, and they got their caps, their limits to, you got to get into their thresholds. And they're like, okay, well, if you burn too quick, and let's say the sales cycles take too long, then you're in trouble. So now it's like, all right, we're in an interesting situation in the financial evolution of the company, where it's like this funding round has to get us to the next. So there is no third chance, fourth chance. This is the fourth chance. So now we've got to be very disciplined and controlled. So yes, we do have to have growth. We have to have controlled growth, intelligent growth. We have to grow the revenues without scaling the resources doing that. Or any resource we add, you have to have an exponential gain on that. So now you got to build the model differently to try to be towards trending cash positive, but while doing hyper growth. So hyper growth, but cash positive, it doesn't normally compute. Usually you get a Series A, Series B, you throw it all in, you do your 3x growth, and everyone's happy. Well, guess what? I got to do 3x growth on my new emerging product, but I also got to move to cash positive, because if that shifts by 6 months, I want to make sure that we're still safe. So it's just been a real interesting thing to try to model all of that. And think of all the different levers and assumptions that you're trying to make and validate, and some of it's guesswork, and some of it is gut, and some of it is, let's be way conservative here on the revenues, and let's overestimate the costs. So I just explained that to my board the other day, to say, hey, I'm tuning down the revenue expectation and tuning up the expenses to make sure that we've still got runway. And then we don't need all these 5 things to pop, but if 1 or 2 of them goes, we're good. If 3 or 4 go, now we're awesome. But I can't bake that into the plan. So that's been the trick, is to try to kind of Goldilocks that thing.
Yes. Yeah. It's a constant iteration, right? With boards, and if you have a board that everybody on the board is on the same page, then you're in pretty good shape. Then it's just managing the board and you. But when you have board members that aren't on the same page, that adds another layer of complexity, right, to the challenge.
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's probably fair. What's it been like? Sort of communicating and aligning downward in the organization. I mean, you're in a company that's been around for a long time. I'm assuming there's some very tenured employees there that aren't used to this.
That's a really good question. The good news is my product team is solid. My CTO has been at the company 30 years. Like he's locked, and I think he and his team are the best. Not disrespecting some of the amazing teams I've worked with, because I've worked with a lot of great teams. This team is by far the best. I always used to say I'm expert at putting lipstick on pigs. Not that some of the software we had was pigs, not all of it was, but didn't matter. You would never know, because it was beautiful. I made it look beautiful, made it market beautiful. Never lied, but made it look beautiful. Now I have Miss Universe. Now I have to get the team to do the product justice. And I had that once before with that Simage product back in the day. That was a beauty queen as well. And it's so refreshing, but also I feel a sense of urgency, because it's like, we've got to get this in front of people so they can see how freaking amazing it is. And it just keeps getting better, as all the AI stuff that we're adding, and what it's evolved from November till December till January till now. And what I just saw this weekend, I'm like, this is insane. I can't keep up with this messaging. but the team is keeping up technology wise. So it's been amazing. So the team though, it's not big team. I would say the front office team, the customer success and so on, they've been around for a few years. They've been through some, we'll call it corporate trauma. I think it's fair to say there's been some changes. There's been some C-suite adjustments. There's been some, sales in, sales out, marketing in, marketing out. Try it this way. No, now try it that way. Now try it this way. Now try it that way. So they kind of seen it all. So they're I won't say they're reluctant, but they're uncertain. They want it to succeed. They've got a lot of good insights. They've got a lot of battle scars, and they got hope, but they don't have like unadulterated hope. They're like, we want it
Cautious.
to work,
Yeah.
but we're unsure. So I'm bringing in a couple new people, try to drive that energy, and just I think as a leader, you just got to constantly be in full on game mode, cheerleader mode, inspiration mode, and just keep reminding people this is where we're going. Imagine in a year from now, and just keep them going. Because I think once they start to see it, because I've been through this many times, from nothing to something big. Once it starts to happen, it's the funnest ride you've ever been on. And I think they haven't really felt that. So once they start to see that and feel that, then they'll start to believe, and then it'll be exciting and fun. I just don't think that they've had that luxury of kind of what does good and success look like.
Yeah, yeah. So you've got yourself some bridge funding, right? You're rebranding the company, you're introducing an innovative new product. Are you shifting markets, or is it the same ICP, the same personas, or is that shifting too?
It's the same. I think it's going to be maybe targeted a little bit differently. The messaging is evolving a little bit to accommodate for that.
Mhm.
And I think also because of sales friction, especially when you add AI, we've got to put some disqualifiers in there. There's going to be people like, we'll get to you later. You're not going to go fast enough for us. I don't have 18 months to sit down and convince you, but we'll come back in 18 months, and maybe then, Mikey will like it. Remember that life cereal commercial,
Yeah.
I can't be I got to go to the Mikey who wants to try it, not the guy who wants to see if Mikey likes it. So that's really just really focusing then on making sure that we're laser focused on let's say the ICP, but then the sub below that, which are the qualifiers and disqualifiers.
Mhm.
You don't want, you're worried about SaaS, you're worried about AI, you're worried. Okay, you know what? We'll come later. We'll come back to you later.
What do you think is the biggest risk that you have, right? Whether it's inherent in the market or, associated with the situation that you're in, with the company and your funding and, the team.
Whew, biggest one. Well, I'm an optimist, so there's no risk. No. I would say that I have like deep convictions of what's going to work. Um, the question is which of these levers we're pulling are going to work fastest.
Mhm.
Not that they won't work, but which ones are going to work fastest. So, for example, we launch a product that's going to sell on e-commerce. Okay, am I going to sell 5 or 500 or 5,000? I have no idea. That's a risk. I don't know how to model that, or we're going to work with some partners. Okay, partners are great, as you know, but partners can also be not so great and they get distracted. They get many things. So can I get a partner that is focused and we work together and make money together because I'm helping them make money with their products? Or find a pure reseller that is desperate to add value to their customer base. If you can find those, great. But otherwise, if you're more of a reactive sale, you're on the price book and maybe they hear it, maybe they call you, I got to figure that out. How do I model my partner relationships and which ones are going to pop? Because it's not like I've got this massive success that I can just say, point to that and replicate that,
Mhm.
right? We've got a lot of experimentation. I won't say it's unguided because we've got a lot of experience on the team to work and figure that out. But which one or ones are going to be the ones to go? So to me, that's really the risk. Is I've got a bunch of runways to take off from. There's some headwinds here. Which ones are going to get us off the ground fastest?
Yeah.
So that's really so it's basically doing everything all at once and then seeing what happens and being data driven and being quick to pivot, but also letting some things ride a little bit because sometimes take a little bit longer. So, and then just being massively resource constrained in the process.
Sounds easy.
Oh, piece of cake.
Yeah, so there's a balance, right? I mean, you have a bunch of options. You want to pour a little gas on each option and see which one lights up,
Yeah,
right? And then once it
exactly.
lights up, and you pour a lot of gas on it, right?
Yes,
But
exactly.
the big risk is that you don't put enough gas on any of them initially for any of them to light.
Yep, exactly. And then
Yeah,
the other part of it too is, we're not going to sit here and go double the capacity of the team by doubling the team. So we also have to be careful that if we do get wild success, that all of a sudden we can serve those customers. Don't overwhelm the customer service, customer success.
yeah.
Or that all of a sudden we're selling 65 on-prem things and we just can't manage that. We got to do 65 SaaS, public SaaS things. So again, it's got to be very careful about it'd be great to say a customer's going to come in and give you $1 million, but do you want that customer right now? Can you afford that customer right now?
Yeah. I think that's a very, very enlightened comment, which a lot of leaders don't get because as soon as you dangle a shiny object, right? The inherent behavior is to try to grab it, right, and run with it,
Yep.
versus take a step back and think about what are the ramifications of grabbing that shiny object, right? And a big customer and a big customer opportunity is definitely a shiny object that can take the company on a big old right turn, right, that you weren't planning for, and add a risk profile, right, that you hadn't considered
or
as well.
or into a money pit that wasn't anticipated. I'm
Yeah.
dealing with a few of those right now. I'm doing some what I'll call financial janitorial work to try to clean some things up. Because when you're in a situation, and you're in the moment and you're trying and you're desperate and you've got to get revenues, you got to do some stuff, you kick the can down the road and say, we'll solve that later. Well, guess what? I'm the guy down the road now picking up that can going, okay, now what? So, there are costs to survival. And especially if you extend that survival, then okay, those things are going to come to roost at some point. So that's just yet another wrinkle. If I was
Mm-hmm.
going into pure startup mode with pure Series A funding, that actually would be very easy to do in comparison to where I'm at now, which is there's been a lot of money invested. We're kind of on the last thing here. The product, though, the difference being is we already have the product, and the money and the investments have built this incredible product. So that's where I feel we have a difference here versus when you're just starting and you don't have the product, you got to build it and figure it out. That's all done. So now we're going, and this is just a go-to-market launch activity, which I know how to do. I've done it a million times. So
Are you creating a category, or are you a fast follower of some kind?
I gotta set a category. I have to do that. So it's
Okay.
a category adjacent, or I would say category complement. So if you think about like manufacturing execution systems, connected worker strategies, those are good categories. Smart factories, those things are great. And what I'm trying to bring to that is a kind of a subcategory or something which I'll call a visual execution layer or a visual execution platform, which is the workers and the humans of the world. We are visual people. So to put me in a system of record that's got a million tabs and complicated interfaces, because all that stuff is complicated and is necessary, but now it's time to actually do the job. Just let me hit the play button and give me something easy.
Hmm.
That's what I want to be. So we're not replacing anything. We're kind of bolting on and enriching it and connecting the person in on that last mile side. And then on the first mile side, giving those authors, those experts, like taking the weight off their backs so that they could just easily get the stuff into the system that will then go to the worker. So
Hmm.
that's what I see it as. Like we're kind of wrapping around and bringing the people to the product process people, piece.
Yeah. So refining that messaging, as you start to launch your new brand and your new website and everything like that is the trick, right? Especially if you're not replicating and trying to follow behind somebody who's already created this well-defined market. And you're just saying, I'm better at it. You're actually trying to define, a little bit of a niche, right? That you got to, message pretty, precisely, right? In order to garner
Yep.
interest, right? From your ICP. That's great. So,
And it's like trying to take your competitive differentiators, because you always know what your competitors are doing.
mm,
They're watching you and you're watching them. And, you got to be same but different. And you got to make sure that your voice is unique because your product hopefully is unique, and you got to do it justice. So sometimes there is kind of I've got the table stake stuff that's there for sure, but you've got to say what makes us different and why should you care? And if someone actually cares about that, then they'll choose you. So
Excellent. Well, look, it's been a great conversation, Garth. I'm looking forward to seeing Canvas and Vision come to life. I know you did a little spoiler alert there with the new brand, but I can't wait to see the logos and the actual the brand come to life in your new website.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been a nice transformation for the team, I think, also to see a new look, kind of representing where we're going. So it's kind of a refresh for them too. So I can't wait to launch it. It's supposed to be in a month. We'll see. Got to do it. So that's the pressure now. Pressure's on.
Pressure's on you. Well, you get it done. Well, let's keep in touch, Garth, because I really wanted to hear how it goes. Sounds
Great.
like you've
Yeah.
got a great plan and ready for this ship to get underway.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks, Jeff, for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Right.
Bye.